Hello, everybody. Welcome to the VML. This is season 11. We're sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, and we're so happy to be here. This week is the top 16. So, just say who we are. We are the VML. We're an 11-week long MTGA league which showcases the talents of amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. So, like I said, this is season 11. We started with 128 total players. They were divided into 16 divisions. We did 7 weeks of round robin play. We had a wild card round. We did the top 32, and so now we're at the top 16. We are getting so close to the finals. That will be next week. So, how are you feeling, Nile?
I am so excited. This has been such a great VML season, both because the players have been really incredible, but also because Standard is just in such a good spot right now. Like, we keep seeing such a wide variety of decks that are performing so well, and it's so cool to get to see them showcased in the VML week after week.
Absolutely. And how could I forget? We have our special guest tonight, Jason Yee. Jason has been one of the VML's top competitors for how many seasons have you played now, Jason?
I started in season 8, which is the one I won. And I've been playing since then, though I haven't really done as well since then, certainly.
I mean, when you've won, I feel like that's already an accomplishment.
It's a
So
high bar. It's a high bar to reach.
Yeah.
But we're so happy to have you with us tonight. Jason is an expert, and I'm so excited to hear their expert commentary throughout the evening with us. I'm really looking forward to commentating with the two of you this evening. So let's move
Indeed.
on. And what are these competitors playing for? I know some people are curious, may not know. So in addition to cash prizing for the top 16, they also get qualifier weekend badges, and then the top 8 they get RC invites and they get to compete in our capstone event, the VML Championships. That's going to be after seasons 11, 12, 13 are finished. We'll take the top 8 from all 3 of those seasons, shove them together in a tournament. They'll go head to head, and the top 2 out of that will get PT invites. So something very exciting to look forward to for them if they make it to next week. So our competitors tonight have a lot to fight for. So now, how about we take a look at our metagame site and see what these people are playing this week? Nile, do you want to just give us a little bit of a rundown on what you're seeing here and if this is something that you expected for the breakdown?
Yeah, this is definitely not outside the realm of expectation. We're seeing a bulk in the Esper and Dimir colors. I think it is pretty safe to say that right now in Standard, black is just one of the strongest colors in general. So decks that can really leverage that and take advantage. Like I've said many times on this broadcast, that decks that can go bad on turn 2 into good bat follow up on turn 3 perform really, really well. And we see that in the Esper decks, we see that in the Dimir decks. But this is also still a really great display of how healthy Standard is right now, because we are seeing a bunch of different decks here. The Azorius control decks are really great. Convoke is still a pioneer deck that exists in Standard for some reason. Ramp, 5-color Golgari, Azorius, like these are all really cool decks, and I'm really excited to see them up against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, do you have anything you want to add about the metagame breakdown this week?
Yeah, I always love to see these standard metagame breakdowns because you just see how diverse standard is, like Niall was saying, with like all sorts of different decks, from like the more mid-rangey decks like Esper and Dimir, which are more about like, applying both pressure and having disruption, versus something more like Convoke, which is just all out. And I think as we're narrowing down to like the top 16, top 8, we're seeing like less of the more out there archetypes, like maybe like Temur Ramp, or this Azorius mid-range deck, which looks to be a bit of a brew. But there's like still some of that going on, still some non-standard decks, and it's pretty great to see that happening.
Yeah, I love that there are 8 different decks in a top 16. So that means, half of the decks are different from one another. So, all right, now that we've looked at the meta game, why don't we go straight into our first match for the evening? First match, we're going to have Brittney. She is playing our 5-color domain here. We took a look at this deck a little bit earlier. It has our, staples of the Archangel of Wrath, Atraxas, our ways to ramp to them. Was there anything that stood out to you, Jason, about this deck?
Well, it mostly looks fairly stock, like a lot of fairly common choices, for Archangel, for Topiary Stomper, a bunch of Atraxes and Herd Migrations. But the thing that stands out to me here is actually the 3 Spelunking, which is like a bit more of the spelunking than we've seen, and it like just is something that mostly furthers domain's game plan without like really interacting with the opponent, as opposed to I think usually in that slot you might see more like wraths like depopulate. You also get to see the one of Imidane's recruiter here, which is some new-ish tech, which just really lets domain close out the game with, like, for example, herd migration into Imidane's attack for 23. That can be pretty potent.
Yeah, that's that's a lot of damage that can basically come out of nowhere off of an empty board. I like how Brittney says that one of the few cards she doesn't want to see is the Tishana's Tidebinder. I know when you put down a Atraxa, that's one of the few things you don't want to get Tidebindered, right? All right,
Yeah, like
so
everything in domain gets hit by
yes.
that.
All right, let's go and see who Brittney is playing this week. We have Aspi over on Esper Midrange. So, Nile, this Esper Midrange deck, do you see anything that's a little out of the ordinary, or do you think it's been pretty stock?
I think this is fairly stock Esper, which I mean, right now, stock Esper is kind of a loaded term. Everyone's kind of there's like a few flex slots where kind of anything can go, but you know, nothing here seems like too out of the ordinary for me. I think both of these decks are very, very good in standard at the moment. I think Esper is probably one of the best decks. I think Domain Ramp just has so many good answers to mid-range piles. I'm really excited to see how these end up lining up together.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of these decks are just, they might not always be the stock, but they're stock full of good cards, which makes it hard to 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 win on either side. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started with our first match of the evening. Right, looks like Aspi is going to be on the draw. That is a very slow hand for Aspi. Brittney, on the other hand, has some things to start off with. What do you think about this, Nile?
Yeah, it's a little tough. I've played a lot of Domain Ramp. 2 lands with like no way to um, accelerate that really is a little. I mean, it never feels good to keep, but the rest of her hand is really good. But we are going to see the mole here, and this is honestly a pretty sweet hand. Getting to play that herd migration, getting leyline binding online really quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. On Aspi's side, I saw that that was a double mulligan, but we do see that there is going to the opportunity to get Dinnick on 2, which I think might be able to help Aspie stay in this.
yeah, Denicon 2 is pretty good. I mean, you would love to be able to play like a bat or something on 2, but Preacher being such an important card, I think playing towards that is totally reasonable, and Brittney just gets to hold up her herd migration activation here.
Yeah, Jason, what do you think about Brittany having the double herd migration instead of, say, like maybe a topiary stomper into like the invasion?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily ideal on Brittany's end. Like you do really want to like be pressuring Esper here, right? Like the whole thing that Esper wants to do here is like establish this threat creature and then start clocking you. And like if you pressure them back, then they have to spend more resources like on interacting with you, like playing counter spells or tide binders, things like that. Whereas this hand is developing a bit slower for Brittany, which is not ideal, but it still works. You have the answer here of leyline binding for the preacher, and then curving pretty nicely into next turn invasion should start getting that domain ramp engine flowing.
Yeah, I agree, especially with having up the beanstalk to help get some card draw as well. because looks like Brittney is doing pretty well in terms of getting ramp, but getting threats is where she is might be struggling a little bit. So the beanstalk will hopefully help her get some of those cards that she's looking for.
Yeah, really
Yeah,
unfortunate
definitely.
that she wasn't able to have the lands out to play Beanstalk and Binding in the same turn. I think definitely just playing the Binding out is the right call there. You can't let Preacher go unanswered, but I'm sure she really wanted to be able to play that Beanstalk first.
Yeah. It looks like Brittany has the mana here to potentially go with a herd migration for 7, but we do see that Aspi has that Urtai resurrected that can potentially counter it. So going to start with the up the beanstalk.
Yeah, pretty heads up play here by Brittney, playing around Urtai, Tide. Well, Tidebinder doesn't counter Herd Migration, perhaps, but like also No More Lies as another counter spell that hits Herd Migration here, but might not next turn once you get these extra lands from Invasion. And just like uh, wasting Aspi's mana here, not giving anything particularly good to interact with.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw that, but it looks like Brittany is down to only 2 more basics in her library. That's that's pretty good for the the domain decks that are trying to ramp quickly.
Yeah, this bat is very interesting. Basically, Brittany is free to herd migration now. Um,
Yeah, it looks like Aspi is holding up mana for potentially a normalize, but I think even if Brittany plays the herd migration, I think she has the mana to play around it potentially.
yeah, definitely. And with this up the beanstalk, it's just going to be 2 cards drawn regardless. Um,
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is interesting to me. I would have expected Brittany to like play around No More Lies here and just play a herd migration with 3 mana up, but it looks like she's instead going for like extra card advantage and saying like, I don't care if you cast No More Lies, I'm just going to draw into more threats, perhaps.
Yeah, and, if something does get countered, that's one less thing in the future that's going to get countered, right? So at a certain point, like you don't want to spend 7 mana and have that countered, but it is also a calculated risk.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do just have to play through them. I mean, she could also just not play this turn, hold up her Spara's headquarters, and be set up for next turn. She's not really under any pressure to, uh, get a bunch of beasts on the board right now.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
told, Aspi's clock has not been all that fast here. Not much to apply pressure with only a 5 card hand.
Oh, getting another herd migration. I don't know, but is that all 4 herd migrations now, or is that just 3 of them? I know that one was,
I think it's
I think one
discarded.
was bottomed.
Oh, right,
And
yes.
so I think we've only seen 3. I mean, it's been shuffled now, of course, but I think we've only seen 3.
Gotcha. And did play around the No More Lies, but the Urtai Resurrected will come out and be able to counter the herd migration here. Still gonna get the
Oh,
Atraxa off of the draw.
I mean, these are 2 really, really good draws for Brittany.
Mhm. That Sunfall can take care of that board, especially if Aspi decides to use the instant Virtue of Loyalty. So that could be a potentially really good Sunfall coming up. I would expect Aspi to wait until Brittany's instep so that it wouldn't happen, but you never know.
Yeah, this is where you really start seeing Domain run away with the game, where like Aspie has had some amount of interaction with the bat and the Urtai, but now Brittany is just chock full of cards. All of them are really impactful. All of them need to be dealt with, and Esper just can't keep up at this point with not enough of a clock.
Brittany electing to discard the herd migration to go get another basic. I guess she's going all in on the Atraxa. She does have the Cavern of Souls set, one of them set on Angel, another set on Dinosaur. So that Atraxa, she does not have to worry about that getting countered. She might have to worry about it getting killed immediately, seeing as Aspi has to go for the throw in the hand.
Yeah, there's also Tidebinder in Aspie's deck, though not in the hand right now. Of course, Brittany doesn't know that. So it's not like Esper has no way to interact with a caverned Atraxa, but nothing here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm interested to see if Brittney goes for the Sunfall or the Atraxa here. Looking like the Sunfall might be her choice.
I think there's mana for both.
I think there is mana for both. Yeah, there is. And man, just getting to draw 2 cards off of everything she plays basically is so ridiculous.
Yep. And then drawing into a ley line and ooh, yeah, that at this point it looks like Brittney maybe, starting to get away with this one. It's definitely leaning in her favor now.
Interesting. Brittney choosing to play this super slowly, super conservatively, and like to some extent it makes sense. Like she can certainly afford to, given Aspi's position here. Just really playing around that Tidebinder, I guess, not exposing it, the Atraxa to that.
I think playing around the Tidebinder, and also like I've been in the position a lot with Domain where you don't want to play your Atraxa just because you're actually going to overfill your hand. And, like when you have 2 beans on the board, you end up in this awkward position where you're discarding cards that are really good. So I think she's just in a position where she doesn't have to play the Atraxa and she's got plenty of things to do.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I like slow playing it. I like slow playing it a lot.
Yeah, especially when it looks like every single card in Brittney's hand at this point is at least a 5-drop and will trigger the beanstalks.
Including this ley line, which
Into
draws into another ley line.
I've definitely seen some domain mirror matches or matches against control where you just decline to take like very many cards off of Atraxa because like even in the mid game, just because you don't want to discard them to hand size and you don't want to risk decking. It does come
Yeah.
to that.
I would be surprised if this third beanstalk makes its way to the field just for that exact reason. It looks like the first Atraxa may be coming out. Which at this point,
Yep.
it's a safe bet. Aspi is tapped out. No worry about the Tidebinder. And
there's a Midrange. That's huge.
Oh yeah, Brittney does have a bit of a life total to chip away at, but the Atraxa will be able to take care of that pretty quickly.
Yep, 7 turn is no joke. In addition to any other creatures, and I think now we are pretty solidly.
I think she has mana to play the sorcery too.
Draws another 2 cards. Keep the cards flowing.
That's so sick. Oh, this deck is incredible.
Oh goodness. I know we talked about 23 with the herd migration and Imidane, but how much is this? 30 minus
21?
21. 21.
That's
Yeah, not quite 5 4/3s coming at you, but Atrax is a pretty big one too.
Yeah. She makes up for a couple of those beasts. It looks like this will be game 1 for this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really the power and flexibility of the domain deck. We saw Esper get it pretty low, but if it can get to the late game, it's just so hard to deal with the amount of value that they're able to generate.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with that Esper deck already being on a mull to 5. It's really hard to climb that upward hill once you're already at a loss in card advantage.
Absolutely.
We see the removal coming out in favor of Duresses, which I think is a very good move here. It looks like some negates as well came in, and a disdainful stroke.
Yep, and a couple Lorans to deal with all of the leyline bindings, beans, things like that. Various enchantments on domain side.
Aspi certainly knows how to sideboard for this matchup.
Now this is a hand. Wow.
Ooh, for Brittney, I think this is an okay one for her as well with the herd migration and spelunking.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
definitely keep it. It's not your favorite thing, but I think on the draw, like you're fairly happy with it.
yeah, it's a bit slow, but especially like in these post-board games where like Esper is trying to like trade one for one with you a bunch with duresses, negates, things like that. It can be kind of dangerous to mull too low in search of a better hand. If you don't find one, well, this kind of start duress into bat not going to be great for you, especially if you've mulled low.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I think that was a good move on Aspi's end, taking that herd migration, putting Brittany off of that third land, and basically making her have to draw into it and get lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sniping that herd migration is going to prove to be pretty huge, and leave Brittany with some kind of awkward decisions to have to make.
Hmm. Yeah, because
Yeah,
she had the
usually
option
thoughts
to.
these effects. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. I was just saying, using that get lost on the bat to get back the topiary stomper, I think was a good move there. She's still gonna need that third land, but once she can get that stomper out and start rolling with more lands on board, but we see second bat, and I think that stomper's tucking under again.
Yeah, I think Aspi has done a very good job here of identifying what matters in this particular game. And she is just really excelling at keeping Brittany off of any of the things that make her deck work. I mean, this is just like a devastating start for Brittany.
Oh, absolutely. The life gain and the rummaging, this is a strong beginning for Aspie. I like that the anchorage is now there, so that gives Aspie another potential blocker, or just another potential creature.
Hmm.
Yeah, and still no land on Brittany's side. Game very quickly slipping away as the clock becomes bigger and bigger every turn with Rafine. Hand gets more and more full of disruption. Really not what you want to see.
Mhm. Putting the map onto the anchorage, I think that's a smart move, seeing as it's a lot harder for Brittany to remove the anchorage as it goes back to being a creature at the end of turn.
Yeah, very, very smart to put it on the anchorage. Very hard to deal with.
Yeah, Leyline Binding can't even hit it because it says
Hmm.
non-land permanent. Even when it's a
Mhm.
creature, it's still a land. So very few
Yeah,
ways to deal with a creature in domain. One of the main weaknesses.
absolutely. I think the get lost that Brittany cited in might be one of the few ways.
But we've already seen one of those played.
Mhm. Yep. Brittany does have that third land now. Now the question is, does she put the topiary stomper out to go get more, or does she can't even target the Rafine right now because she can't pay the ward cost.
Yeah, it is. This is a big decision point for sure. I think playing the topiary is definitely the strongest move here, but I mean, there is still, you know, a bunch of damage in the air that, you know, is probably just lethal.
Yeah, I think Brittany or Aspie only has to discard 2 non-lands to make this lethal. Oh, and
Hmm.
that's if now
Oh,
now
that'll
she
do
just
it.
has it. The disdainful stroke going to the yard, it will be enough.
Yep. Just not enough lands on Brittany's part. And usually you can't thought seize away lands, but herd migration does not have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very well played by Aspie, putting Brittany off of her ramping and just getting in aggressively.
Yeah, but we see Brittany there taking a look at the cards played, checking to see how Aspie is sideboarding.
Yep. Noticing that the Duresses came in, the Laurens came in. Uh,
Hmm.
so even though it doesn't look like Brittany's going to be making any changes, just having that awareness of what to play around is always very helpful. With Magic, information is key.
Absolutely.
We have Aspie. Looks like she is also, I think, electing not to make any. Oh, maybe one go for the throw it back in?
Yeah, that makes some sense. Like on the draw, domain is going to be able to like stick a threat more often, like an Archangel, right? Like that you might want to kill because Esper has a really hard time attacking through an Archangel. Everyone does really 3/4 flying lifelike. So just having more of those as you're less able to no moralize perhaps on curve.
This is an interesting start for Brittney. I like that she has the leyline binding. Um, she
No way to cast it though.
Yeah, it's not really getting the discount since the land already has green and the other 2 lands are, 2 forests and a cavern.
Yeah, this hand is much nicer. Deciding what to put back here is a little tough. I like the Sunfall decision. Having Herd up on 2 is obviously what she wants, but of course, we know that might be a repeat of game 2 here.
Yeah, I think it's a tough choice between the herd migration and the get lost because we do know that Brittany has 2 other lands in hand, and it may not be too hard, but you want to make sure that she's not getting up to like the 4 or 5. Though that's where it starts to get scary on the domain side.
Yeah, and of course, we do know, everyone knows that she did get to land number 4. It looks like this Archangel is definitely going to get to come down whenever Brittney wants it.
Yeah, I think having the Archangel and the Atraxa both as angels makes this a kind of easy Cavern of Souls choice.
Absolutely. Cavern of Souls was such a huge addition to this deck. There was like such a clear delineation between the time where you were like, oh, I just, board in my counter spells and, shut down their late game, to them being like, oh, no, I actually can't shut down their late game because it's all caverned.
Hmm. That definitely makes this a little bit harder to navigate, having to just remove the creatures once they come out, but still getting all of the beneficial trigger effects. Which I think that's why Tidebinder has become such a good kind of alternate way to handle it by stifling those ETBs.
Absolutely.
Right. Aspi using the adventure side of the virtue to make a 2/2 with vigilance.
Yeah, Aspi being able to apply this like flash clock has been pretty nice at like, establishing a bit of pressure, but unfortunately it doesn't actually have any disruption in hand to back that up. No like counter magic, no Tidebinder. So this Archangel is going to be a bit problematic for Aspi here.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mostly,
especially since it can be kicked once.
yeah.
Yeah, very curious to see if Brittney is going to go for that or just simply go for the herd migration and plan to double kick it next turn. I think in these games we've seen Brittney be very respectful of Tidebinder, and a Tidebinder on a once kicked Archangel is so much more devastating than a Tidebinder on a twice kicked Archangel.
Mhm.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. You get to cycle and guarantee your land drop, which is very important with tracks in your hand, while also holding up Get Lost for maybe perhaps this Rafine that's about to come down. And like you said, that twice kicked Archangel, you at least get one trigger out of it. Whereas if you run it into a Tidebinder with only one kick, it's just a 3/4.
Yeah. And looks like she's going to be very rewarded.
Going to immediately get lost that Rafine. Not even taking any chances. Just completely need to get out of here.
Yep.
Yeah, and here we're going to see the coast be pretty clear for Brittney to resolve this Archangel. And unfortunately, with the counter, she won't be able to kill both of the creatures, but you can certainly snipe one of them and leave a huge blocker that's going to be a bit of a problem for Aspi to deal with as well.
Hmm. Brittney checking her mana to see which color she's really missing.
This is the hardest part of playing this deck, especially in paper, is your mana sequencing and making sure you've got the right stuff to play your Atraxas, your Archangels.
All right. Like you said, that double-kicked Archangel. This time, no worries about having to play around the Tidebinder, but getting the double kick is, beneficial either way. The bat's gonna come out, and it's I think it's just the Atraxa, right?
Yeah, I think it's gotta
Yeah,
be. You don't want to
Yeah,
let Brittney refill her hand.
yeah. And knowing that the Wandering Emperor there is just an additional, heads up to not attack your bat in.
Yeah, and you've got a vigilant creature.
Yeah, so all told, Aspi was able to answer that Archangel pretty well, like preventing the Atraxa from getting down and also being able to kill the Archangel. There's still a Wemp to deal with and still whatever Brittney draws up the top, but it really is anyone's game at this point still.
Yeah. Do you suspect that Brittany is going to wait to flash in the Emperor or just going to go ahead and play out the Beanstalk?
I think this is a really tough decision.
Yeah, because obviously the Emperor can't exile the 3/3, and Aspi, I don't expect her to attack with the bat, just, knowing the Emperor's in hand. But flashing out the Emperor post combat on Aspi's turn to just make the 2/2 also didn't seem like a bad option.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
thing is
mean,
like playing second Beanstalk really lets you like dig towards that like big threat that you actually want, right? Like Sunfall, Atraxa, second Archangel, or Herd Migration, and also lands to cast those. So it's really a tough decision.
Mhm.
yeah, I really like Brittany's play here. I think right now she just really needs to dig for answers. And I think this Emperor, especially because it is face up, is just not going to be that impactful. So I think getting the second Beanstalk down, very smart. Especially like, it obviously digs for a card immediately, but then also like half of the cards Brittany could possibly draw next turn are now going to draw her 2 cards when she plays them. Um, you just have to play for the late game with a deck like this.
Yeah. Any idea or any opinions on Aspie not playing out the Lauren and blowing up one of the beanstalks?
I
Yeah,
think
I
just
mean,
representing interaction is pretty nice here, like either a Tidebinder or something, like making Brittany a bit more scared and like not playing into a Sunfall more. Um, and like two beans, you're kind of just hoping your opponent doesn't draw anything at that point.
That's completely valid.
yeah, definitely playing around the board wipes is a very big deal in these matchups. Like, you want to apply just enough um, pressure that they have to play awkwardly. Like they have to play Sunfalls on like 2 creatures and stuff like that. You don't want to give them too much value for free.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is also the difference between a 3/3 and a 2/2 on this kind of board state whenever you're flipping that incubate token.
Absolutely.
Must be playing out the fairy mastermind, and I'm not sure. Is Brittany considering whether or not to flash out the Wandering Emperor in here?
Yeah, I think she's considering whether or not, because like shields are down right now. Um, I think she's considering whether or not to just play the Wandering Emperor when she knows it resolves.
Hmm.
It's a tough call because obviously getting it countered or Tidebindered is pretty terrible, but also like there's just not a ton of value for it resolving right now. So I think
Yeah,
I
at this
think
point,
holding it
though,
is very, very much the call.
yeah, playing it on the end step there would mostly just be a 4 mana 2/2 that gains 2 life and gets attacked. You can't
Hmm.
really use it for much else. I guess you could make a 5/5 on your Topiary Stomper. That might be better, and like then it doesn't die, but still minimal usefulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, it looks like the Topiary Stomper and the Knight would just be trading off, and then Brittney still has to fight that battle in the air against Aspi's Bat and Fairy Mastermind. So, yeah, I guess she's definitely running the risk of, do I flash out the Emperor and pump up the Stomper, or do I wait until one of those other flyers attacks and then exile it?
Yeah, they're in this game of like bored chicken right now where like Aspi can't really attack in with too much. Um and Brittney, like when Aspi does stuff like this with the Fairy Mastermind, Brittney is very not incentivized to do much with the Wandering Emperor. But I think this is definitely favoring Brittney, this position that they're kind of in together.
Mhm. Yeah, Brittany has so many options for life gain. So while she is getting a little low, being at 8, um, there's a lot of options for her to come back and turn this around.
Yeah, it's a really tough decision here what Aspi wants to do. There's so many options, but like none of them are amazing. Like there's no like true like counter magic kind of interaction here to prevent any threats from the top. So the question is, how do you navigate around that? Uh Danik is an interesting choice, providing more pressure in the air. Um, but at the same time, not really dealing with any of the beans and like pretty weak to any banger off the top.
We will see that Emperor come out now, exiling the Fairy Mastermind. Oh, that's a great hit for Brittany, being able to draw 2 cards. And do you think that's just the bat, right?
Yeah, I mean, getting Atraxa back is so huge, especially on a turn when you can play Atraxa and it's going to resolve.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this might be the turning point for this game in Brittany's favor.
Yeah, but drawing the
Not
Archangel
going.
does change things significantly because now she can just kill
Yeah.
both Danik and the bat.
Yeah, that being one of the draws, yeah, prior prior to the draws, I definitely was like, "It's the bat," and I was like, yep, maybe not."
Yeah, this makes sense. You get to guarantee that you get a bit of life, clear the board. This way, you like there's just no threat on your life total. Whereas, like if you play an Atraxa, yeah, you draw a bunch of cards, but you could theoretically die to something like a Go for the Throat, killing your Atraxa. This is just a bit more agile.
Yeah.
And to some extent, this is like the punish of the line that Aspi took of like, just playing out the den, like applying pressure but not interacting at all. But on the other hand, it's not clear what she could have done about it.
Also,
Yeah.
very subtle, very tight technical play from Brittney there to stack the angel triggers to where Danik died first. So Danik gets exiled and doesn't get to resolve a trigger for the bat dying. Small things, but things that can really matter in these matches. But congratulations, Brittney. That was such a great match. Both players played it so well. Very exciting to watch.
Yeah, fantastic job, and congratulations, and welcome to the top 8, Brittany. We're so excited to have you,
Ooh.
and it's gonna be a great week next week. All right, are you both ready for our next match?
Yeah, that was
Indeed.
great. I'm excited for more. Let's see what's up.
All right. So next off, we have Noor. Noor is on Boros Convoke tonight. Jason, this deck, it's I think it's a fairly stock list. You got your novice inspectors, your lethal demolition, your imidanes. Was there anything that stood out about this list to you?
Yeah, like you said, mostly stock. You have your classic pioneer curve out of novice inspector into gleeful into knight errant VS. But the spiciest thing here is definitely the 2 virtue of loyalty. That's not a card you see that often in Convoke. Usually that slot is more like War Leader's Call has been pretty stock. The 3 mana anthem that also is a impact tremors. Whereas this Virtue of Loyalty is a bit slower, certainly, looking to maybe play a slower game. And you can also see that in the 2 Get Losts, which are also not always in the main deck of Convoke. But at the same time, playing a more resilient game where like you get 2 cards for the price of 1 and like get to play at a flash speed, play around some sweepers perhaps. So yeah, that's definitely the most interesting part of this deck.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I know that the get lost, having that targeted removal when you're really just trying to ramp in, or not necessarily ramp, but just, accelerate your board state so fast. I thought that was an interesting choice, but I think it'll be a good one against our other opponent tonight, Zoe, and she's on Dimir Midrange. This Dimir Midrange deck, this has been one of the decks that's been, I think, gaining more and more traction as we've gotten deeper into the season. Nile, is there anything about this deck that stands out to you?
I mean, I just really love Dimir mid-range. I've, said it so many times. I will keep saying it. Any deck that has bat into good follow-up for bat is going to be really strong. And some of the best follow-ups for bat right now are cards like Gix, cards like Preacher. Um, this deck is so good at the clock plus disruption thing. I think this is fairly stock Dimir. But it's a pretty tight match, I think, between these two decks. Convoke always has the potential of just having a pioneer turn, and there aren't really a lot of ways in standard to elegantly answer that. But also Dimir is just so full of, like if you're on the play, you bat them on 2, like you can really stop that pioneer turn from happening. You can really shut them down. I I am very excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, Jason, what are your thoughts on the two main board duresses in this list?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. That's definitely, I think that's maybe a concession to metagaming. But I do know Noor switched her deck between last week and this week. So unclear how those will play out against Convoke. Generally not the best to have duresses against a creature deck, though of course Convoke does have a few of those non-creatures that are very impactful, like case of the or Gateway Express, and the Virtues, of course. I think also generally Dimir is like slightly unfavored versus Convoke just because the like blocking on the ground isn't like the Dimir creatures aren't made for blocking really. But we'll see. Anything can certainly happen. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're both ready, let's get into the game.
Let's get into it.
yeah.
All right, Nor is on the play. I think this is an okay hand for Nor, but not fast enough, is what she says.
I
Yeah,
think
I
he was
mean,
missing white was the main problem. I think I saw
um,
2 red lands.
mhm. Yeah, this is
This, on
like
the
the
other hand, is a
dream
Canadian
hand. Yeah, yeah.
game.
yeah, this hand for Nor definitely seems like the ideal with the Epicure coming out, Gleeful Demolition, Novice Inspector being able to get your Knight Errant on. Ooh, maybe not on 2 since I think we might need 2 white mana, but still a very strong start for Nor.
Now this
Yeah, this
can
is
get the
turn
knight
2.
out onto, because the inspector makes the white mana.
Ah,
Yeah, or you can just tap the forge as well. And this is where Zoe probably wishes that she had that duress, because like that
Mhm.
turn 1 duress against Gleeful, that would have changed this game drastically. But unfortunately, very narrow window for that.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Zoe, because in this matchup, game 1 is actually incredibly critical. Um, Being able to beat Convoke pre-board is huge. It makes it a lot harder for them in the following games. But I mean, this is such a
ooh.
devastating. This is like the
Oh my
pioneer
gosh.
dream for Convoke.
Oh, yeah, this is a game 1, a very good game 1 for Nor.
Yeah.
Yep. Is that lethal? It might be.
It
Haven't counted,
has
but
to
I think it
be.
is.
Come, that's
I
like
mean, yeah, I'm not
50
even gonna do the
damage.
math. I'm just gonna say yes. Thank you,
Turn
Arena. Yeah.
4.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the Convoke thing. That's the Pioneer turn.
Indeed.
Okay, coming to sideboarding. What if you're on Noor's side? What are you bringing in here?
I'm actually not sure. I think maybe I've heard some people say Forge because like blue-black can't really remove it, but at the same time, it's also kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
You could look at some of the removal to be more interactive against like especially a Gix is one of the cards you're most afraid of with the Get Losts. Um, I don't know whether you want Gobakon. I don't know how much Dimir plays Wraths in the sideboard. Looking at Zoe's list, there are 3 Deluges, which are not really what you want Gobakon against. So probably not that. Yeah, just not much. Just relying on your main plan, basically.
Yeah, I saw those forges come in, and I think even though it's a little bit slower, it is just a continual creature that grows with every turn. So not a bad move to help get Noor into that late game.
I think this match is so much different when Convoke is on the draw than when they're on the play. Um, you're just so much more susceptible to the hand hate and the disruption when you're not going first, that I think putting in these like slower but more like mid to late game solutions like Forge is really good for the Convoke deck.
Yeah, and that
Listen,
might also be part of like deck selection strategy here for Nor, where like Nor knows that she's higher seed than Zoe, so knows that she'll be on the play game one, and that's a boon for registering something like Convoke with such a high play draw difference.
Absolutely.
looks like Zoe is cutting both of those duresses.
Yeah, I
Considering
think that makes a lot of sense being on the play. It's really just a card that um that she's bringing in to like as best as she can answer the Pioneer turn. But being on the play herself, she doesn't need it. She can just hold up that Make Disappear.
Mhm.
She can cut down this first creature that gets played.
Yeah, I was a little interested because it looked like she might have been considering taking out those make disappears, and I was like, that I feel like that's a good way to potentially combat some of Noor's very aggressive cards.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
this is like really a play draw thing where like Big Disappear is excellent on the play here. As your 2-mana spell, you can counter those Gleeful Demolitions, those early Knight Errants. Whereas on the draw, we might see those come out and the duresses back in because you just need anything to do on turn 1, like even if it's not ideal.
Mhm. All right. Reinforcements flashing out. Gix is going to get lost, and yeah, I think Noor just sending in for 2.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you got to do in these sort of situations. I mean, a land and being able to slam Forge would have been great there while the shields were down, but getting rid of Gix also quite nice.
Yeah, Gix is a pretty good blocker against a lot of these little 1/1s before you can give them the pumps.
Super interesting turn cycle here. Nora choosing between a bunch of 3 drops and playing Inspector into Knight, goes with the Inspector, then gets it counter, which is maybe not totally intuitive from Zoe's side, but like making that Novice Inspector disappear really slowed Nora down there.
Mhm. And as we can see, Zoe does have 2 go for the throats, but Nora's gonna get some value off this first Knight Errant, and we do know that there is a second Knight Errant of Eos in Nora's hand.
At this point, though, the game is probably going to just be all about the Shieldred, especially with the second one in hand too. Like,
Hmm.
definitely a huge threat, both in like beating down and gaining life, taking Nor's chance at racing away quite quickly.
And I feel like that's always every aggro player's worst nightmare is seeing a Shieldred across the board, just slowly gaining your opponent life and making that aggressive mirror or matchup ever so, less in your favor.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like that here Zoe gets to hold up Make Disappear for anything that Cavern doesn't hit. And, if it's just slam another knight, she can also just go for the throat, the knight that can attack this turn. It really just feels like Zoe is so in control of this game at the moment.
Yeah,
At
that
this
make
point,
disappear countering any possible removal for Shieldred is definitely very nice too. Not as scared of the creatures when your opponent's at 5 with Shieldred in play.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Looks like Nora's trying to decide whether to put that Knight Errant out or potentially just running out the Novice Inspector.
Yeah, we know, of course, with Caster Vision that playing the knight is just GG for Noor. You can tap out everything but your other knight, play the knight. Your one knight gets killed this turn by Go for the Throat. Whatever other blocking creature you have gets killed next turn by Go for the Throat. And Shieldred is just lethal.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like that is exactly what's going to happen here. So going to go on to a game 3 pretty quickly, I think.
Absolutely. Yep. Zoe's just got the perfect answers in hand.
And it's playing out exactly as you said.
So yeah, going into game 3, I'm pretty curious to see if we see those play draw dependent sideboard decisions, if we see those make disappears come out, or if we see anything change on Noor's side, maybe being more aggressive, less afraid of Shieldred.
Yeah. I think this is definitely a match where play draw is going to dictate a lot of sideboard decisions. Very curious to see if Zoe brings in those duresses again to try and answer the Pioneer turn.
Mm-hmm.
And we see those forges coming out, too slow on the play. No need.
Absolutely.
Yep, and just like you called it, those 2 Duresses coming back in and 2 Make Disappears coming out.
Yeah, both players making really heads-up decisions for the context of the match, not just based on what their opponent's deck is, but based on where they are positioned in the play draw.
These players, they are definitely top tier in being, having just that heads up and knowledge of exactly what they need to do and, how to play their matches out depending on if they're on the play and all the draw.
That is the turn 1 duress into turn 2 bat for Zoe, though. That is huge. But Noor having the double gleeful demolition.
Yeah. Noor kept almost too fast for me to get a look with this gleeful demolition. Like any hand that can get that off, probably going to be a snap keep.
Yeah, she saw that double demolition and was just like, "Yep, I'm set. I'm good." Send it sideways.
Though in the meantime, not much else going on, but we do get a Warden to scry more action and have be able to grow in the meantime. And of course, Zoe doesn't have much either, with mostly just those 2 interactive spells and a Make Disappear that might not do that much with these caverns in play now.
Yeah, Zoe's really gonna need something. A Shieldred with all these lands would be great, or a
Oh,
Deluge. That could be pretty good as well.
Yeah, get
Deluge
rid of
is
the whole
such a
board.
nice draw.
Immodane's is a worry for the future, but not too threatening right now. It's just a 3/2 haste.
Yep, and we do know Zoe has that Make Disappear. It's not going to be very helpful because that Knight Errant, those Cavern of Souls, not going to be able to be countered. But if she can get to one of those Shouldreds and being able to counter any kind of removal that we saw Noor bring in, um, That's gonna be very key.
Yeah, this really is just a top deck war at this point, and Noor's going first, so that is an advantage to her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll see what this Knight Arrow of Eos finds.
Oh
Nothing.
my god.
Oh, it really is just a top deck war now.
Yeah, some of the downsides of those get losts, those non-creature spells lowering your Knight Errant hits, can make the card a bit worse in these situations.
I do think that second cavern was on vampire, so
Yeah.
not that I'd be too worried about this epicure, but honestly, it does make a blood, which may be, you know, something that Noor needs to start digging.
Yeah,
This has got to be one of the
absolutely.
scrappiest Convoke decks, as Convoke games I've ever seen.
Okay. Some reinforcements. That's not a bad draw there. Zoe unfortunately drawing another land. The Takanuma. At what point do you think she channels the Takanuma just to try to find something?
It's tough. It's really tough. I mean, I think there's a decent chance we do see something like that just at the end of next turn, especially as Noor is, oh man, really winning the top deck war.
Absolutely. And with that last Knight Errant not getting any value, I have a feeling this one's probably going to hit something at least.
I mean, it does shuffle actually, so it doesn't mean that the non-hits went to the bottom.
Oh, good point. Good point.
One and
We
two
will
would do
see.
that. It works
Will
out,
we
certainly.
still see the Novice Inspector and the Voldaren Epicure coming out? Zoe is going to channel that Takanuma, see if she can just find something. Looks like there
Well, at
was an
least there's a
Urtai.
creature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not the Shieldred you're looking for, though.
Unfortunately, no, but that Urtai will be able to at least take out the Knight Errant and be a blocker against maybe the Imidanes. Just try to, just keep that life total healthy until she does get to the Shieldred.
Yeah, I mean, the Urtai can favorably block against all of these little creatures. Drawing Preacher is pretty nice. It'd be really great if we had one more mana on the board.
Absolutely. We're gonna crack that clue. Oh, oh my
Jeez.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
And the Witch
Oh.
Stalkers.
So much gas off the top.
Well, at this point, do you Urtai to? Oh, you can't even counter the Knight Errant.
Well, it can counter the ability. It can't counter the Knight Errant, but I just don't know if that's good enough or not. It's
Yeah, instead of drawing two, you only get to draw one. No big deal. And these caverns doing so much work. Every single creature, human, vampire, none of them can be countered.
Yeah, that's well, Urtai coming out, most likely going to take out the attacking knight and maybe block the Imidane's recruiter as well. Oof, into another reinforcements on Noor's side. Now, at this point, what does Zoe need to stay in this game? Is the shoulder going to be enough?
It probably involves a deluge at some point.
Mhm.
I guess from Zoe's point of view, you can hope for Shieldred to stabilize because she doesn't know that Noor has this frenzy. But we know with caster vision that like a Shieldred's not really going to cut it at this point; it just dies.
Yeah.
There is the
It's
make
really
disappear,
unclear.
but they also yeah, so it's interesting because the make disappear, depending on when Noor potentially plays it, could just be paid.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to hope for Noor to misstep there, because like it's just a one mana spell. It's really hard to like truly play that much into the make disappear. And well, now the frenzy is gone, but there's no Shieldred down, so no, not a huge deal.
Oh,
Jeez.
oh, that
What a draw. Jeez.
you know, getting that block in, Zoe will live barely, just barely. The Epicure can take her down to 1, and I don't
Oof.
that's not gonna be enough.
Yeah, we see these 2 make disappears. Zoe was able to board out 2, but not these. Still had to have 2. Not great, as you can see, but that's going to be the game there.
Yeah,
This
these caverns just blanking those make disappears all game long. So devastating.
Cavern has really turned things on its head with, making very much typal decks uncounterable in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great job to both players, and congratulations to Noor on making it to the top 8. That was a
Yeah, congratulations. That, I mean, we really got to see Convoke do the thing. I thought that was a really exciting game 3, just, seeing this sort of top deck war between these 2 decks. And, Noor just, I mean, she hit the cards that get more cards, and
yeah,
that's hard to answer.
that snap keep, it was just so fast that we barely even saw it, but when you have double, Gleeful Demolition and a turn 1 to make it to,
Huge.
an artifact, yeah, she was set. Alright, well, that was game 2 for the evening. Let's go to game number 3. In this game, we have CliffBoyardee on Golgari Midrange. This is a deck that I've been really excited to see. It has our bats. It has the Mosswood Dread Knight, which has been one of my personal favorites, the Glissas, and the Preachers. Nile, what do you think about this Golgari deck?
I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Golgari mid-range deck. Like I keep saying, I think black is probably the strongest color in standard right now, and I think this makes pretty good and honestly really interesting use of it. I mean, bat is still just like an incredible thing to play on turn 2. The Mosswood Dread Knight is a really sick, just like value engine. Getting to go into Preacher, Shieldred, Liliana, and the Golgari creature land also being very powerful. I think this is a very cool mid range deck.
Absolutely. Jason, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think Golgari, I think, is definitely the lesser of the black mid-range decks, certainly in popularity. I think partially because it's just a bit less flexible because you don't get the powerful blue counter magic. That's why we see Dimir and Esper popping up. So you're like a bit worse at fighting like the unfair stuff, fighting like blue-white control perhaps, but maybe a bit better at fighting those like black mid-range battles. As you have like just bigger stats on your creatures, as if your opponent is also playing similar creatures, you can outstat them to some extent and maybe win the race that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that that cavern we saw did a lot of work against counter magic, but with this deck having a lot more variation in creature types, a cavern isn't necessarily an include in something like this. I also just want to say I'm very excited. I asked the players this week what their favorite arena avatar is, and I just want to say, Cliff, I really enjoy your taste, Fiddleton. He's just a little guy. I'm a aficionado of little guys. So I just really enjoy that. Okay, let's see who Cliff is playing this week. We got Dylan on Azorius Control. I know we just kind of said that Golgari is maybe not the best matchup against Azorius Control because of all that counter magic. Jason, do you want to talk about this deck a little bit?
Yeah, so this is like fairly stock blue-white control. I think, okay, the image looks a bit weirder on my screen, but it does look pretty stock. Nothing much to talk about. Low on win conditions, as you might expect from a blue-white control deck. A bunch of counter magic, answers, card draw, and really looking at those Wandering Emperors and Jace the Perfected Minds to answer your opponent, to like finish the game, milling out your opponent, or just flooding the board with Samurai tokens. And as I said, like probably going to be better into a Golgari than like other mid-range decks, because Golgari just has a slightly weaker disruptive element, like not going to be able to counter those Sunfalls, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Nile, do you have any thoughts on this deck?
This is my favorite deck in Standard right now. I want 8 copies of Deduce. It's so good. It feels so good to play. I love this deck. I do think there's some pretty interesting elements to this build specifically, where it seems like they are more all in on the counter magic and less into the board wipes. I think a lot of the blue-white control lists play upwards of it, like 8 board wipes, and we're definitely seeing fewer of them here. And I think the 3 main deck Jaces is kind of spicy. But I think being so all in on counter magic could end up playing well in Dylan's favor. I think really the thing here is if the game goes late, that is always going to be favorable for Dylan, especially if a flashback deluge is able to resolve. But very interested and excited to see this match play out.
Yeah, I think a big part of this is that Dylan, she said that her opponent previously was playing Azorius control as well. So she brought this list in order to have a stronger match in the mirror. But then, her opponent switched to Golgari and was just like, oh, this is great for her. So I think that might have been why it might have been a little bit heavier on the counter magic more so than some of the other pieces that we've seen in some of the other stock Azorius control lists.
It is so brave to be like, I think my opponent's gonna play blue-white control, so me too. That's so sick.
My opponent has been playing this every single week. I'm gonna beat them at their own game.
It's such a flex. I love it.
Well, let's find out who ends up taking this home in Game 3 tonight. We will be watching from Cliffside.
Oof.
Oof, yeah. This is a much better start for Cliff.
Yeah, this is an incredible hand. You've got the cavern, you've got the moss, you just got like a perfect curve.
With this, the cavern, what are you naming? What creature type would you want? Would it be the vampire for the preacher?
That would be my guess on the
tough.
play. Because like if you're on the play, presumably your Dread Knight's not getting countered anyways. And then like you really want your preacher to stick on turn 3 against the No Moralize.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think there's also yeah, and that Glissa as a really good example. Like we might see Cavron and Phyrexian to get the Glissa Archfiend overlap, which would be very nice.
Yeah, I think drawing Glissa changes the cavern play entirely.
I completely agree with you there. I know I was, looking at that opening hand, I was like, yeah, vampire. And now I'm like, Phyrexian.
Yes. Well, this also sets us up for Shieldred in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think Phyrexian is definitely the most populous creature type in the deck, but again, the types are spread out pretty wide, so it sometimes is just a case-to-case basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely I feel like more so than some of the other decks, this one is very much dependent on what you have in your hand at the time. I know that I definitely would not be wanting to play out a cavern turn 1 unless I had something to play on turn 1. All right, getting in with the Glissa and choosing to draw a card.
And this is a pretty nice start so far, right? With a good clock, but the real question is like, how much do you play into a sweeper? How much do you want to commit more to the board, run things into counter spells? It's always a difficult question against control, that push and pull.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the deck list, though, it doesn't look like Dylan had very many sweepers. So, what are the chances that Cliff is just able to get in and get Dylan down before Dylan can, pull one of those off?
Yeah, I think in a traditional, like I think if Cliff was just playing like on ladder and knew that he was playing into a blue-white control deck, I think you would want to be committing less to the board than we saw him doing. But I think knowing this specific matchup and knowing that Dylan is lighter on sweepers than traditional blue-white control decks, I think it's totally reasonable to play more to the board.
Seeing as that Emperor ticked down, is that a bit of a heads up that Dylan may have a second Emperor in hand?
Definitely
Yeah,
possible. We're about to find out.
True, true.
Just kidding.
Well, none that can be cast this turn, certainly. And we're going to see Cliff get Dylan to perhaps a pretty low life total, but there's a negate for that cut down. Not the most impactful use of a negate, but really necessary here. And then
awesome.
with Dylan at 8, that's pretty precarious.
Yeah, it's a little scary at this point because it looks like Dylan's been having to use those pain lands. And, not saying that she's done all that damage to herself, but there's been a fair amount of damage off those lands, impacting her life total.
Yeah, down to 8 already, and that's with the 2 life that was gained off of the Wandering Emperor.
Mhm.
Interesting question here of whether or not to just send in this Dread Knight, almost certainly trading for the Knight just for 1 damage. I think you do. Like, you
Mhm.
really need to get Dylan to 0, right? And you can still cast the next turn for your adventure. Not the most impactful play, perhaps. In fact, we might see the Archfiend instead, but looks like the adventure is happening.
All right, going to resolve.
This is the most heads up Wandering Emperor I've ever seen in my life, so I'm just so sure we're about to see it.
But Cliff does
I mean,
have
what
to
can you
just keep
do?
pushing through
Yeah,
that
I mean,
damage.
yeah, of course. You do just swing into it.
And that Dread Knight coming right on back. I love that Dread Knight. It's probably my favorite card in that whole matchup or in that whole deck.
It's so good. It's so good.
A little 3/2 for 2 that can. With Dylan being at only 3 cards in hand, I I would have to assume that she's probably hoping for one of those memory deluges to just kind of refill her hand and get more stuff going because I'll be honest, being at 6 is scary.
Yeah,
Being
this
at
is where
6
we're
is
seeing
very
the lack
scary.
of sweepers kind of hurt. Ooh,
Mhm.
Jace is nice.
Jace
Like
is
the
very
spots for
nice. Being able to just bubble this Dread Knight turn after turn. We still have 2 mana up for the clue token from that turn to deduce, or possibly a No More Lies, or
We've seen has it been 2 No More Lies and a negate so far?
Disruption Protocol, No More Lies, negate, I think is what we've seen.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I believe so. And this is an interesting decision as well. So many of these turns, like, which of your big things do you play? Do you just fire up the cottage so you can kill off this Wandering Emperor before it starts generating more value? Or, like, maybe even pressure the Jace, though that's pretty hard to do, so that you can
Mhm.
unlock your Dread Knight. This is some of the power of Jace, like forcing your opponent to put more on the board, playing into a sweeper.
Mhm. I think that was a good move by Cliff, basically forcing Dylan to, have the counter spell. We've already seen 3 and, you just kind of have to keep forcing through and just keep playing out threat after threat against these Azorius control decks until, eventually they run out.
Yeah, resolving the Aclazotz is pretty huge.
Yeah, because we know that that Archfiend of the Dross with the cavern, it can't be countered. So I think it was very big getting the Aclazotz out um, that turn.
And also just getting the information that in these, oh, that's so incredible. But that of these cards in Cliff or in Dylan's hands, there aren't counter spells, or one of them is not a counter spell.
Mhm. And electing to use the Go for the Throat on the Aclazotz so it doesn't get exiled and can return. I really like that play by Cliff.
On one hand, you do get the Aclazotz, but it's unclear how soon you can use that. Like every resource does count, but I am wondering if maybe it was better to just play out the Archfiend, and that's threatening lethal in the air basically. Whereas like this play a lot slower.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a spicy play there. Especially because like we are getting to the later stage of the game where Dylan can really start to run away with it. But I guess we'll
Yeah,
see if
but at the
that
same
plays
time,
off for Cliff.
Dylan has like no cards in hand. Well, two now, one in the previous turn. So there's clearly not a deluge as well. So we might actually be able to see the game like close out without Dylan really getting much card advantage. And in that kind of game, I kind of like the Archfiend more, though. It's really hard to say at this point, certainly.
Mhm. Yeah, this it's very interesting. It looks like Dylan not doing anything right now, but does have a way to at least activate one of the anchorages if she wants. A long goodbye is a nice answer to it, though.
Can actually activate both anchorages because of
Yeah.
the what's that land called?
Sunken Citadel.
Sunken Citadel. Thank you.
Yeah, so it might be nice to just like play the Archfiend, can't be countered, and then just attack with both. That puts a decent pressure on. Like you kind of the attack with creature gets a card if not any damage, and then the Mosswood Dread Knight would pressure some blocks. It looks like Cliff is going to take a slower approach here, threatening the Emperor instead, not committing the Archfiend yet, playing a bit around, maybe a board wipe.
Yeah. I think also just waiting to see which creature may be doing the blocks. Potentially with that trample, being able to long goodbye whatever creature and then pushing that damage through.
I think double block is very heads up from Dylan.
Yeah, playing around that removal spell, and you know that black green game one has got to still have some amount of removal spells. You don't want to just make a cut down, suddenly kill your Wandering Emperor as well, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Then that Dread Knight comes back, gonna see about getting more value off of it for Cliff, potentially.
What's really interesting is we're now also in this like sub game of never, like go too low on cards in hand, or else Aclazotz comes back.
Mm-hmm. Looks like the
At the same time,
Archfiend.
though, Wandering Emperor does have the ability to downtick on Aclazotz because it does come back tapped at sorcery speed. So there is a window there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely want to make sure that Emperor is off the board before Aclazotz re-enters. Right, Dylan digging for some kind of answer. That Archfiend is
And
really
this is
gonna
why, yeah,
say that Archfiend is really gonna start applying pressure though. Dylan's gonna have to use resources to either remove that Archfiend. Uh, looks like she does have the one more anchorage that can be a blocker, but if she can't remove the Archfiend, that is threatening lethal.
yeah, definitely. This is why I was arguing for like committing it to the board sooner. You just like pressure your opponent sooner, make them have it, right? Make Dylan in this case have the Sunfall or the Get Lost, and you've already seen one Get Lost gone at least, and Dylan's very low on resources, so good time for an Archfiend. Six to the face.
I'm very surprised that she hasn't drawn into any of the memory deluges yet. That's I'm pretty sure it's a four of in the deck, and by this point, I would have expected to have seen at least one of them.
Yeah, definitely Deluge, one of your best cards. Not happy to not be seeing that. And it looks like we're not really gonna have an answer for this Archfiend, at least not immediately. So, but definitely a scary turn for Dylan.
And Cliff still also has an activation on the Restless Cottage if he
Mhm.
wanted to attack in with that as well.
Yeah, and a long goodbye for the samurai. A lot of ways to really make this turn like pretty tough to impossible for Dylan.
Because I'll be
Yeah,
honest,
interesting.
if I'm Cliff, I think do I just send all to face?
So one thing you can think about is just like another copy of Wandering Emperor in hand, because that would really punish attacking with the Archfiend, right? But you can get 2 damage out of this removal spell because of the Archfiend trigger. And then the question is just like, is there any combination of things in Dylan's hand that can like punish you for like making various attacks? There's a lot of things to think about.
Mhm. All right. And yeah, Cliff is going to just pressure Dylan and not even worry about the planeswalkers.
Yeah, I mean, at 6 with the 6/6 flyer, you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. Looks like Dylan is just going to dig for more answers. Looks like she still can activate the anchorage. This is going to be an interesting, very pivotal turn. Cliff
Yeah, I think
electing.
I
Yeah, Cliff.
think I think that Cliff was supposed to proactively use Long Goodbye here because like letting this block happen means that you lose out on the 4 damage from the cottage, whereas like if you had just killed the token, yeah, maybe the Archfiend dies in response, you don't get the 2 damage, but then you get the 6 damage
Oh,
from combat. And now we see not quite getting there, not quite past the finish line.
yeah, because the Emperor can now. I think she's at 3 if I'm reading that correctly. Just
Mhm.
exile the preacher and gain a couple more life. So that could have been a make it or break it moment in this game.
Yeah, this might just be the window that Dylan needs to turn the corner.
Mhm. Alright, milling with Jace.
I wonder what the graveyard totals are. I'm almost a little surprised to not see Dylan mill herself.
I
Yeah,
mean,
just to
on
try to
the
get a
one hand,
memory deluge in the grave wouldn't have been the worst there.
yeah, on the one hand, there are deluges, but with 3 Jaces, you can imagine maybe the plan is just to like fully mill out Cliff, and we see. I think that's like a 34 or something like that.
Yeah, 34
Unit time
card. So eight in the yard for both is what we're seeing right now.
Mhm. Yeah, so like another Jace activation plus like if you draw the other 2 Jaces and then just -5 both, that's lethal there on deck damage.
Yeah,
So
definitely could be the line right now.
Mhm. Ugh, this is a difficult choice. Does Cliff just activate the cottage? Dylan does have the anchorage that can block, and we don't know what Dylan has in hand. She has 3 cards, so there may just be spot removal there. This is going to be a difficult choice on
I mean,
Cliff's
she
side.
has to have an answer for the cottage. Um, there's just like
The
there's no
Liliana, that
Liliana's really good in this matchup.
yeah. Does
yeah,
Cliff
but this might be a bit late.
Yeah, does Cliff bait out the any kind of counter spell with the Sentinel and then try to play the Liliana afterwards to get any more cards out of Dylan's hand? I think that's what he's gonna attempt.
Yeah, it's interesting because this way is better against protocol as we see, where you don't get the Liliana if you want the Liliana to resolve. But if you play the Liliana second, that's worse if your opponent just has a no moralize, right? Because then the
Mhm.
Liliana get got by no moralize. But that said, I do think that probably you just want creatures here and not the Liliana. Like we see Cliff not even prioritizing them at all because, you know, Dylan is at 4, and we're now seeing the first Memory Deluge. Probably the first of
Hey,
many.
Memory Deluge.
And
It is a card in the deck.
there is enough mana to still cast a Sunfall if that was one of the cards taken off the Deluge.
Looks like not going to happen this turn, at least.
Letting the
Maybe still happen
Emperor
down.
die.
I feel like that's another heads up move that there may be another Emperor on the horizon.
Yeah, usually that is what happens. The Emperor disappears and reappears again as a mysterious wanderer.
All right, gonna activate the cottage and
Cottage is really nice here. Having, something important to exile in the yard.
this is difficult because, if the Emperor does in fact come out, which it does not appear that that is the case.
Yeah, I think this is really great from Dylan protecting the deluge.
Especially with those 2 maps that were just created off of the Get Lost. That could potentially be enough to, pump the Dread Knight and remove the Samurai and get in for lethal if there's not another answer from Dylan.
Well, this is the beginning of combat, so it's too late to use a map.
Oh,
Good of
that's
Dylan
true.
to wait until then to use the Get Lost. It's for that exact reason. But we might be seeing Dylan go to 1 again, all the way down to the wire. Very, very close game so far. Oh, though I guess there is this anchorage to block this Dread Knight, saving a bit of damage, keeping you at a healthy 4 life.
The Sentinel of the Nameless City. I like the move of putting out the Sentinel in case there was another Wandering Emperor that may come down. This way, that Sentinel won't get exiled. But there also is the potential Jace, -3, -0 that makes the Sentinel a little less good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but we're back on the mill strat, draw a card.
Yeah, probably looking for something at this point. Maybe like nothing in hand to deal with this board. Maybe hoping to draw a Sunfall. Maybe already has one, so doesn't need to worry about the board. Yeah, really interesting game here. You see like both players slinging resources left and right. Golgari still not running out of a constant stream of creatures. He's even as like the Azorius has been answering the threats turn after turn.
I like that the Glissa is what's on top. I think naming Phyrexian with that cavern was a really smart move. That way, the Dross and the Glissa cannot be countered, giving more options to hit the board. It just has to be a very careful play around if Dylan does get those 2 main board Sunfalls.
Yeah, and spreading these counters out, really making the Jace bubble a lot less effective.
Cliff going in for lethal once again, forcing Dylan to Memory Deluge for an answer. But Dylan's gonna have to have 2 answers.
Yeah, what answer could even...
There isn't. We are gonna go on to game 2. Cliff taking this first game in favor of the Golgari Midrange.
Yeah, very well played by both players there. Cliff doing exactly what you kind of need to be doing against this deck, of just getting a bit of pressure on and getting, the life total low. And Dylan, she got to the later part of the game, but the life total was already so low, and not seeing those deluges until so late in the game was Really, really brutal.
Yeah, at that point, I expect to see those in like, typically an opening hand or like first few draws, but the fact that those deluges just didn't come up until so late, I think really, really hurt Dylan in that first match. Ooh, this
Also,
is
another
a
subtle thing. Wow, that is an interesting hand, certainly. A bit land
yeah,
light.
Yeah, no real black sources.
The hope is definitely to, just draw any third land for this Glissa. And obviously you would prefer some swamps to help cast this arena and this duress.
yeah, that dress gets a little less good when you can't play it on turn one.
Yeah.
This is
We kind of
tough.
Do you choose Phyrexian like last time, or yeah, it looks like that's what Cliff is gonna
think
elected
so.
here. I think
Like
with
I
the
think this game just hinges on Glissa, right?
Yeah, I think Glissa and the Archfiend, just making it onto the board are gonna be, huge advantages early game when Dylan's probably
Yeah.
wanting to play out more of her counter magic. Jace coming down on the
Notably
board.
also notably also, this cavern serves as a black mana for those double black Phyrexians in hand, Shieldred and Archfiend. So working towards that as well.
I'm very happy for Cliff and getting that third mana because I won't lie, I was a little worried.
Yeah, still can't cast that arena yet, but coming up, certainly halfway there.
Going to take a peek at Dylan's hand. Oh, all
Whoa.
three Jaces. Okay. Not what I expected.
And a march. What a hand.
I wonder if you have to take the Jace just because like the threat of mill is too large. I don't exactly know what the numbers are on there, but that's two Jaces is half the deck, so might
Yeah,
be a bit
I
dangerous.
that's a hard choice. I think at this point, Cliff is just gonna try to put enough pressure on the board where, if Jace comes down, like you do have to be a little bit worried that Jace just comes right down and starts milling immediately. Um, but we'll see. Uh, but knowing that
But
Dylan
definitely the
doesn't,
march is
yeah,
definitely the march is nice to take here because it means Dylan doesn't have anything to do this turn. And like the Jace is stranded in hand are not great, but a get lost off the top is going to be pretty nice
yeah,
for
Mhm.
hands trying to kill.
that was a great hit for Dylan. However, we know that an Archfiend is coming out next, so or actually, I think you put the Archfiend, right? Like, it has a higher, power than Shieldred, being able to maybe knock these Jaces off even with the -3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably the Archfiend.
I think the Archfiend's pretty nice here. I
In
mean, it's
some
just
senses,
such a
Archfiend,
high impact card.
yeah, it's like better at chunking away the first like 12 damage, and then Shieldred can like eke out the last four, right?
Hmm.
Mhm. Alright. Do you think there's any fear that that Archfiend doesn't get removed before all of the oil counters tick down? Do you think that's
Probably
a
not.
real possibility in this match?
I don't I don't think that Dylan has enough life gain for that, but it would be a sight to behold, certainly.
It would be very cool.
You know, we're not gonna worry about that. We're gonna see the March of Otherworldly Light take it out, and first Jace is down. But lo and behold, I think Shouldred's about to arrive.
Yeah, just map first, see what's in there.
Honestly, dressing on top, I like that move. That way, we may see second Jace, but I don't think third Jace might make it to the board.
And we see Dylan respecting that, saying, shuffle that right pack in. No, no this time at least.
Oh, we will see a Glissa off the top, though. That's not a bad draw for Cliff. Oh, the Wandering Emperor is here to take out Shieldred. I don't think that's
Yeah, I
how it
keep
went down
thinking
in the actual story, though.
I keep thinking that at some point Dylan's gonna have to cast one of these Jaces because we know there's still 2 of them in hand and like not much else. But then Dylan's just top decking pretty well here, like having the right answers at the right time. But at some point she might run out unless she gets a deluge, perhaps.
Yeah, she's had some pretty strong answers every turn after that first duress that we saw.
Yeah, the top of her deck has been very nice for sure. We are now seeing one of these Jaces come down finally. Glissa triggers when she does damage, right?
Yes, so a
So
0
this
power Glissa
does
will not,
stop it. Yeah.
unless you get a map somehow.
Shoot 'em up.
Yeah, at this point, honestly, Cliff is looking in a pretty good spot with this Phyrexian arena. Really hard for Blue White to keep up with just 2 cards worth of threats every turn, without having to like contribute mana towards drawing those threats.
Going to
Ooh.
get lost though. I really love this Mosswood Dread Knight. The fact that it just keeps coming back, keeps drawing you cards, like I love that. It's definitely my favorite card in this deck. I think I said before.
Yeah, I maybe you have to kill the Dread Knight to protect the Wandering Emperor, but leaving this Phyrexian arena on the battlefield and giving the Dread Knight a chance to draw a card, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah, definitely not having the ability to get rid of that arena anymore. That is no small cost.
Mhm. And we see that Duress taking care of the third Jace in this game, but also giving us the heads up that Dylan does have a No More Lies in hand, so Cliff can better play around the counter magic now.
And at this point, Cliff has 8 mana. It looks like at least a bit of it is a bit off screen, but that's plenty of mana to work with to play around the No More Lies, certainly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That Aclazotz, unless Dylan drew a second counter spell, I think Aclazotz may be coming out next turn.
And notably, the +1/+1 counter on the Glissa is pretty huge. Keeps the Jace bubble from being able to stop her. And she's just such a good answer to these planeswalkers.
And other duress.
Yeah, we're seeing the power of Arena, where you get to have a duress and a threat too for your turn.
Honestly, at this point, I think I'm okay just letting this duress get countered because it removes the counter.
Yeah, probably just firing that off because there's no other non-creatures in hand.
Hmm.
If you're in Cliff's position, are you worried at all about either of the planeswalkers? I would say probably try to take out the Emperor. Just well, she is at 1, so you don't have to worry about her exiling just yet. Or do you just go face?
I mean, Glissa doesn't really have to choose, right? Because with Glissa, you can choose, if Glissa does connect, you can choose to remove 3 counters instead of drawing a card. And that takes care of a Planeswalker right there. So I really like this attack. Pressuring face with Glissa, so to force the chump, otherwise you lose a Planeswalker anyways, and getting rid of this Wandering Emperor with the Dread Knight as well.
That's all value for Cliff.
Yeah, such a nasty fork between these two creatures.
I think if I'm Dylan, I think I'm really hoping for a Sunfall off the top. I think
Sunfall off the top would be huge.
Yeah, but
looking to put
even still, then you
backing.
have the arena to deal with. It gives you some breathing room, but isn't just the game.
Right.
All right, Dylan's looking for an answer. And we get the sunfall off the top. No. Dylan lives
Grab
to
a
see
leg of it.
another turn. I was gonna say, does Cliff just take away the incubate token? And it looks like he will. Well, what a clue.
Yeah, I think getting rid of the clue is very good here. I don't think you're actually worried about the 4/4. But I think you definitely do not want Dylan drawing into anything useful.
Yeah.
that makes sense. But you do still give a surveil because of these new surveil lands. Shout out to those.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I like the move of just playing out the bats. Props to the bat god.
I think we can't quite see the graveyard for a deck count, but most of the Jaces are through anyways, and I don't think this last Jace is going to fully get there. So
A Liliana and a Sentinel. Not bad. The Liliana can deal with the 4/4 if Cliff's ever worried about it, but I don't think. Aquazot's gonna get lost, and the bat's gonna take out Jace.
notably, Dylan can activate Mirex in response to the Liliana sack trigger, so it really only eats up a Mirex token. But still good to get Lily on the board. Maybe you plus Lily actually to like incentivize it to get attacked instead of yourself, and like maybe you can make the Sentinel into a 4/5. We'll see.
Let's see if, yep, like you said, Dylan makes that Mirex token and sacks it.
Yeah, I think maybe Cliff didn't see that, given the oops.
Yeah. I definitely think a plus there would have been the move, so we can make the game about getting Liliana to 6 and ulting. But hitting 3 land drops in a row is so brutal.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, not able to is unfortunate.
Yeah, that. I feel like the odds of 3 lands are not that
Impressive.
high. Yeah, yes, that's a good word for it.
4?
4?
I really wanted to go
There
for
we go.
5.
4's my lucky number.
To some extent, this shows the power of black green, right? You're able to just grind through this whole pocket of lands where, like, you know, a lesser deck might just falter at drawing this many lands this late into the game, but we're just chugging right along.
Yeah, I won't lie. Normally for me, Azorius is the deck that's, grinding and churning through all of these lands, but this Golgari deck really, does a great job at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are also seeing the real power of the Azorius deck to be able to, like hang in this situation where your opponent has Phyrexian Arena and, all this value, and, you're still keeping up relatively well.
Mhm. I'm curious, at what point does Cliff just want to, say, I have enough lands. I want Aquazot's back.
Well, it's really tough. You don't want to play into, like the greatest sunfall of all time.
You know?
Speak of the devil.
Just like you called it. You have a good point there.
Yeah. Not playing into the Sunfall, not playing into a Wandering Emperor as well.
Yeah.
But now the case is a bit more clear. Like, another Sunfall spent. You're able to commit to the board even more still and keep applying that pressure. And just grind out Dylan very, very slowly, scrapping it out.
I like the Liliana uptick forcing Dylan to flash out the Emperor now.
This Tranquil Frillback's going to be able to do quite a bit for Cliff.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
just break the incubate token, right? You break
Yeah, you
that,
can.
you gain life.
Looks like not valuing the life gain because you can just spend all your mana here, casting Gix's command and flipping the Akhlazotz, but notably, the Akhlazotz does play pretty poorly into that Wandering Emperor right now, which
Yeah, I
can
think just getting back to your creatures and being able to play one or both of them this turn is pretty nice.
Yeah, and we see that happening here.
Absolutely. That is a big dinosaur and a lot of threats over on Cliff's board now. And that
Yeah, and we
Liliana
just
being
see
at
this over and
3.
over.
Oh, that's actually huge. The Field of Ruin. Yeah, deal with that Akhlazotz forever. But this is just such a scary board.
Absolutely.
Yeah, normally you see blue-white able to like grind out against all the threats with, Field of Ruin taking care of some of the more esoteric ones like Creature Lands and Akhlazotz. But with the Phyrexian Arena, I don't know how long that's been active, but at this point, Cliff has drawn way more cards than Dylan, way further into the deck, even considering the Jaces.
Yeah, and this Liliana trigger is going to be a lot more effective, even though it's Dylan had decided to sacrifice that little Murex token. That's still 2 damage from the Archfiend. So this is no insignificant amount. I think this is actually game or it's going to be very close to game because you can chump the 5/5, but you're still taking 5 damage because of the Archfiend triggers. This is getting close to the end.
Yeah,
Sunfall off the top, or you're immediately dead, and even if you have Sunfall, you're pretty dead after that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What a game.
That was incredible. Both players did a fantastic job. Congratulations to Cliff with Golgari Midrange pulling it out over the Azorius control deck.
Yeah, congratulations indeed. Very well played by both players. I mean, just really saw, Dylan's back against the wall there and, really was able to grind it out for a long time. But after a while, what can you do when your opponent is drawing twice as many cards as you are?
Yeah, the memory delusions just really didn't show up for Dylan like
Yeah.
that deck wants them to. And I think that really put her on the back foot in like the 2 games that she lost. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, every game with blue-white, you just really want to draw those deluges. Definitely your best card, and only seeing 1 in 2 matches, not amazing. Or was it 2? I think it was only 1.
yeah, they were long matches though. Well, we are on to our final match of the night. So let's head right on over to game 4. This match we have Chelsea on Azorius Midrange. So we just saw Azorius Control, but now we're seeing this mid-range build. Nile, do you want to talk about this Azorius Midrange?
This is such an interesting deck to me. There was a while back where we saw a good number of like Azorius Flash or Esper Flash decks. And this seems like a little reminiscent of those things, but we're seeing like a lot of Flash creatures and then also just some really impactful 2-drops like Dinnick and Shredder, and then just like all of the best white cards and interaction and disruption. And I am so intrigued by this deck and find it kind of tricky to evaluate in this matchup, but very, very excited to see it play out. I think it's a very cool looking deck.
Yeah, Jason, do you have
Yeah,
any
I
thoughts
think
on this one?
So actually I have a bit of inside info, and also like looking at the at Chelsea's answer to the why did you choose your deck. Um, the answer is actually here, I believe, metagaming. Like quite a bit of metagaming, where Chelsea's opponent Sam registered only mono red and World Souls Rage decks, like the Teamer Ramp decks, throughout the whole season. So I think this is just a response to that, saying I am going to put cards in my deck that are good against both mono red and World Souls Rage. And notably, you have Kutzel's Flanker there as both life gain, some incidental life gain in the body versus mono red, and Graveyard Hate versus Teamer Ramp. So I think that's why we see those there. Of course, they're still okay cards on their own. And you get a bit of Scry, maybe some Wrath Protection, but not going to be the best given this juke from Sam into Esper. Not at all what Chelsea was expecting, probably. And it doesn't look like Chelsea's very prepared, unfortunately, for this matchup.
Mhm. Well, as we've already talked about Sam a little bit, let's go over and see their slide. Sam this week is on Esper Midrange, and like you said, Jason decided for it. After playing Teamer Ramp and a Mono Red for the first past 8 weeks, so definitely a big juke. Jason, what do you think about this Esper Midrange deck that they decided to register this week?
Yeah, this looks pretty stock for Esper. Unlike the last Esper deck we saw Aspi piloting, this does have the wedding announcements, all 4 of them. That's been somewhat of a contention in the community over which whether wedding announcement is worth including or not. But it seems Sam has fallen on the answer of yes. So here we are with just all of the classic Esper stuff: Bat, Rafine, Go for the Throats, Cut Downs, wedding announcements, all the good threats, all the good answers, all in one deck. And we'll see how this does.
Yeah, Niall, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a really smart move by Sam to pivot into this deck. I think they are pretty well positioned in this match. Obviously, anything could happen, but I'm very interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, me too. I also want to say, asked about the favorite arena avatar, and Sam says Phyrexian Jace is the only Jace for me. Me too, Sam. Me too. Let's go ahead and get into the game now. All right, we're gonna be watching from Chelsea's side. Oh, yeah, no blue mana for Chelsea. Sam also mulliganing.
Yeah, a still kind of awkward hand here for Sam.
I like the cut down, and getting the anchorage isn't terrible, but still a bit slow on Sam's side.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the
pretty awkward.
Aquazotz doesn't line up too well into the 4 Wandering Emperor, which is something that Sam did mention on their slide.
Yeah, and as we can see, Chelsea does have a Wandering Emperor in hand. It just doesn't quite have the mana to cast it just yet, but there's a few turns before she needs it. Anchorage out on 1. I like that. I'm interested to see if Chelsea puts the Dinnick out or holds up the No More Lies. Going to looks like put the Dinnick out.
I think that's got to be the play. I think you have to advance your own mission before you, worry too much about holding up your interaction.
Yeah,
I
definitely
agree
on the
with
play. Also, I think generally you want to be pointing that No More Lies at a 3-drop, like either Rafine or Wedding Announcement before it can run away with value. So perfect time to play the Denic now, get something on board before you want to answer your opponent's stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart heads up move from Chelsea to wait and for some of Sam's larger threats. I do also like that Sam decided to put the Fairy Mastermind out while Chelsea was tapped out so that he wasn't running it into any of that counter magic.
Yeah, he knows he's not doing anything proactive in the anytime in the future, so no reason to just turn that No More Lies on for free.
Mhm. I'm interested to see if Sam is going to use the removal in his hand against the Dinnick and the token. Doesn't look like it just yet, at least.
Missing a land drop here, kind of brutal.
Yeah, not being able to, flash out that Wandering Emperor. But, there is still the option of the Tidebinder if Sam does put something out that needs an answer. Getting the
Yeah,
bat
maybe this
here.
bat.
Yeah.
Just the 1/1.
Looks like Sam might be going to attacks first before deciding which land they're going to play out.
There is the question here: Tidebinder or No Moralized? And I do like this answer of using Tidebinder because it's more efficient with your mana, and also it's one of the few things you can Tidebinder here in this bat. Like, there's not all that many out of Esper. Like, there is Rafine, I guess, but you would rather just take that off the board completely and not risk it coming back. Whereas, like, even if the Tidebinder dies here, the bat is just a flyer; it doesn't still get a card.
Yeah, I was interested to see if Sam was going to try to take the Tidebinder or the Dinnick out, since the bat really doesn't get any more added value aside from the flying and lifelink back. Where the Dinnick is still gaining Chelsea a lot of life.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
think
I think it's good also just to get more board presence. I think Chelsea's doing really good at doing a lot with only the 3 lands she's been able to find.
Mhm. This is going to be a very interesting turn since Chelsea does have that No More Lies. Sam really is going to want to put that Rafine out, but the counter magic, there's not enough mana to pay for the No More Lies tax. And
Yeah, but the hope is this gets countered. Maybe Aclazotz resolves, and maybe we can go from there.
yeah, I think there might have been a route where Chelsea lets the Rafine resolve and then just uses the get lost on it. But now Chelsea has the mana for the Wandering Emperor. So I think at this point, does Chelsea just let Sam play out the Aclazotz and wait for it to attack?
I think that's definitely
Yeah.
possible.
It's tough though to like just waste 4 mana this turn. I think
Yeah.
here's a weird spot where you could maybe think of like using Get Lost on the Aclazotz instead, and just saying like, okay, you can spend your turn flipping Aclazotz. That will tap it. So then I can Wandering Emperor it. I don't need to wait for a card. But it looks like Chelsea is going to just go for the Wandering Emperor here, put on a bit more pressure, maybe doing the proactive Get Lost, like I was saying, but
Hmm.
also sending out that Wandering Emperor even into the Flyers just to have a bit more pressure.
Yeah, no, I think this was a good move. Doing that. I think I don't know if there was an argument to maybe uptick the Emperor and put a counter on one of the attackers this turn, as opposed to making the second token. But I think that was okay. I think this is a okay move. Um, looks like gonna put out the second Dinnick and send the other one to the yard.
Yeah, amusingly
Oh,
not giving the first one visits on accident, but
you know,
basically you're saying I want a 3/2 flyer for 4 here, and I'll
Yeah.
I'll pay 2 this turn to have it next turn for 4.
I mean, she wasn't gonna be able to block with it on the ground anyways. Everything Sam has flies, so. But yeah, I think just a minor mistake on which Dinnick to keep.
I think plussing with the Emperor there was pretty nice because it forces more attacks at the Wandering Emperor itself, which means you can get to attack for more anyways. And like, yes, this is putting more power onto the board by a bit, but it's not forcing as much.
Oh.
You know, it's okay because Chelsea's never punished, and it's okay. You just get the second Emperor right when you need her.
Yeah, no, this is interesting because it's very appealing to exile that Bat God, but also you can just go to combat, attack first, and there's some chance that Sam doesn't block correctly here. Like only blocking one thing would be dead
Mhm.
to Wandering Emperor. So you're kind of forcing the chump, which is nice.
Yeah, I think it's always good to give your opponent the opportunity to, like accidentally play into something like this. Oh, very interesting.
Whoa, that I don't know if I like that. Because now you're losing the Wandering Emperor to the Aclazot's trigger, and you're allowing Sam to gain 4 life. That's going to be huge. And now we're even seeing a bit of a punish for letting that Denic, like playing that Denic to the graveyard, because now you don't have it in hand as fodder. Like, I would like this a lot better if there was a Denic in hand that you could just discard for free and still have the Wandering Emperor.
Yeah, I think not taking out the Aclazotz when the opportunity presented itself was not the move that turn. Especially when we see that Sam has the shouldered in hand and can start, gaining that life back. Well, getting life back with the shouldered and with the bat.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. I mean, you do have like pretty good potential to just win the race with the life totals where they're at and with the virtue on board. But I mean, like, that's so much lifelink in the air.
Yeah, and now add a Shieldred on the ground too. Game is kind of slipping out of Chelsea's control here. Extra blocker on the ground as well from this wedding announcement, providing continuous value. And suddenly, Chelsea has no attacks.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like this Denic becomes a 4/3, but it's still just outpaced by this Aclazotz, and it's going to be outpaced for 2 turns in a row because the wedding is going to flip next turn.
Mhm. Oh, and we knew from the map that Sam was going to get the second wedding announcement, and Sam also has an anchorage, so there are a lot of flyers over on Sam's side. I don't necessarily know if he wants to trade the anchorage off for the Dinnick in the air, but I think at this point, if I'm in Sam's position, I'm just gonna, you know, put all the pressure on where I can.
Yeah, I think at this point you just like attacking with Aclazotz. Is like certainly I think it's just enough. Yeah, the 1/1 attack here is pretty nice too, just to draw a card and like guarantee that your engine is running. Like yeah, you give Chelsea a bit of life here from the Denic block, but you just know you're going to outvalue this game. You're going to draw 2 cards here off of these wedding announcements. They're going to flip. You're now at 14. You're so far out of the range.
Well, you're going to be at
That can happen.
18 too, right? Like,
Oh
Gaining
yeah.
4 life off
Chills
those
are
2
even
cards.
more. Just slowly grinding out. Don't need to hurry. Don't need to overstep.
And with Sam drawing that go for the throat, that that growing Dinnick in the air isn't really even a factor anymore. And Sam could also even take out the Dinnick on the ground to prevent any more lifelink on Chelsea's side, if that's what they're afraid of. Sam has a lot of options.
Yeah, and we see this Kutzel flanker here. not looking very impressive again. The reason it's here is, in fact, to as a tech card for matchups that aren't this one. So, not surprising it's not performing here.
I don't think either of these are what Chelsea's looking for right now.
No, Fairy Mastermind's pretty awkward when your opponent has a Shieldred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but at the same time, is there anything that Chelsea is looking for here? Like, are there any realistic outs at this point? I'm struggling to think of any.
Yeah, it's tough.
I guess would another Tidebinder or another Wandering Emperor? I know that there's 4 Emperors and 3 Tidebinders. We've seen 2 Emperors and 1 Tidebinder from her so far.
I mean, this is just lethal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With the Shieldred draw.
Mm-hmm.
Or Shieldred damage from the draw. Yeah, that will be the game. Alcazot's running away with it. Sneaking past those Wandering Emperors.
Those sneaky bats. They get you when you least expect it.
Indeed.
Yeah, very tough first game. Very interested to see how these players are going to board against each other.
You imagine some of the flankers have to be coming out here. Though there isn't that much in the sideboard either. Like, again, this is a lot of tech for Mono Red and Temur. With those Surge of Salvations, great against both. Negates great against Temur, knockout blows against Mono Red. But none of this is what you want against Esper. Maybe we saw those wedding announcements snap come in, and probably you want the Loran, but unclear after that.
Yeah. The Loran maybe to take out the, Sam's wedding announcements, but yeah, the flankers aren't much value here. So definitely cutting those, and yeah, like you said, everything else was pre-boarded for a different matchup.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the dangers of like over metagaming here, of being too confident. And like to some extent this is like a really high upside play, right? Like if your opponent does just go with what they've been playing, you will absolutely destroy them, right? You're pre-boarded and playing a very warped deck just to hard target their 2 decks, but didn't work out in this case.
Yeah, we do enjoy a good metagame here at the VML, but sometimes, as you can see here, sometimes it doesn't always go the way you're expecting. From Singh's side, also looking to possibly board in some Lorens. What are your thoughts on this sideboard, Nile?
Yeah, I mean, the awkward thing about this matchup, and the like unfortunate thing about this metagame call that just ended up being incorrect, is that I really think Sam is favored pre and post board, just because there's kind of nothing in Chelsea's deck. Like, we were just looking at the sideboard, there's not really anything to bring in to make it much better. I think for Sam, the thing here is just not overboarding. Like, I think making a couple substitutions, a couple upgrades is all you want to do. I really don't think you want to mess with the recipe too much here.
No, I completely agree with you. I think Sam's deck was strong coming in, and with Chelsea not really being able to make any valuable changes, it's still strong going into the second game.
Yep, we see like a couple like point swaps here and there, but really nothing fundamentally changed. It's just Esper was not prepared for. Base Esper is just good. No reason to like change much, because there's not much room to improve for a different reason.
We are running out of time for the sideboarding with only 20 seconds left. Still making those last minute adjustments over here on Sam's sideboarding. Just about done though. And here we are into game 2 of our 4th match of the evening. Chelsea is sadly seeing a 1 land hand going to mulligan and go down to 6. This isn't bad. The negate wedding announcement, it seems like an alright start. Gonna put the negate back. Sam keeping a 7-hander.
Yeah, I mean, this hand curves pretty nicely. I mean, unfortunately, so does Sam's.
Yeah, with Sam being on the draw, having that cut down if he wants to take out this 2/2 knight is pretty nice as a response.
It's actually funny how similar both of their curves are right now.
I didn't even realize I didn't see the other virtue in Sam's hand. It's just like a mirror.
Wedding is going to make a 1/1. Loran's going to come down, kill the wedding, have a 2/1 left. Slightly bigger in that exchange, I guess, but all very similar. Then
Yeah, but
2 wedding
Loran's
embers are gonna
also
duke.
quite good against the Emperor.
Mhm. Oh yeah, vigilance. That's so good against the Emperor. Ugh. I love that this is a potential just complete mirror between these two decks. Uh, Lauren's going to be a bit of a wedding crasher here. Yep. What's better than the first wedding? Second wedding.
I mean, pretty good when you have a virtue chilling in exile as well.
Mm-hmm,
Lots of
absolutely.
1/1s.
I feel like this might end up just being a big race to whoever gets their virtue out first, which right now, with Chelsea having been on the play, it looks like it's favoring her.
Now, this is not going to make a 1/1 because of the double attack here, but getting to draw a card, of course, always good.
I like that
Yeah,
Sam
that's an
got the
interesting
bat
decision.
here. Can take a peek at Chelsea's hand and snap that Emperor.
Pretty face up Emperor given the attack too. Like not
Mm-hmm.
you don't generally want to be attacking a 1/1 into a 2/2 without something to back it up. So sees nothing else. But there still is a virtue chilling in exile.
Yeah, I think that definitely incentivizes Sam to attack with both here, just to try to get Chelsea's board cleared. Very happy to trade with that 2/2.
This is a pretty great curve presented for Chelsea, where she gets to play the virtue this turn, and then next turn has up, get lost the bat, replay the Emperor if she wants it. Gets to make more 1/1s with the wedding.
Yeah, also pretty nice choice to not play around No More Lies here because like you really can't be doing that because you just don't have anything else going on, even though your opponent is representing mana for it.
Yeah. Unfortunate stacking of the triggers here, it looked like, where the virtue actually happened before the wedding did.
Yeah, I was just thinking that where it would have been nicer to get the 1/1 out before the virtue put the counters on there. But, Arena likes to do its own thing sometimes, and if you don't catch it, it'll just
Mm-hmm.
go right on without you.
Now we have dueling virtues, and the question will be, where is this get lost going? Is it the bat to get back a Wandering Emperor, or are you trying to get the virtue advantage? And it's not clear.
It is not clear, but man, it's really tough, honestly.
Right? Like Even though this is Azorius versus Esper, this has been almost what seems like a mirror match, aside from just these bats hanging out.
So one thing you could do is you can attack with your 2/2 because I think if your opponent blocks, like using Get Lost plus Emperor in order to
Mm-hmm.
uh, eat the 3/3 as well would be pretty valuable. But it looks like Chelsea's just going to pass the turn and delay the decision a bit.
Mhm. This is a interesting turn, I think, for Sam. Going to start with the bat, but at this point, does Chelsea play the get lost out on the other bat, get the Emperor, flash it out, and then leave no options for Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of. Oh, I like this quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't hate this choice certainly. Um, the virtue is going to be pretty hard to beat when it looks like your opponent's board is going to be wider than yours. You know, with only 2 creatures to 3, especially with a couple of them flying. That said, getting back to the Emperor is a good way to make more creatures for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is close, but
Yeah, I
don't fault.
either way, I think Chelsea was fine. Like it was a good move regardless of which one she chose. I do think in terms of a race that she was probably better to take out that virtue. Granted, we know Sam has the second virtue in hand, but just to prevent that first one from, making Sam's board bigger and um, especially with Sam being able to hit in the air, that's going to be a hard race to come back from.
Well, and let's not forget it is also kind of 3 creatures to 3 because Chelsea does have this anchorage. And even if she kind of like draws into nothing, she's pretty soon to be able to just start activating the anchorage, even just to um,
Get the
get a
counter.
counter on it.
Which I think that may be the route to go here with all that mana and not really anything else to do.
Yeah, if she plays the planes, she can activate anchorage just to get a counter. And the Emperor is very heads up. So you can't really like
Yeah.
attack with it or anything.
Yeah, in general, here we're kind of seeing just like the difference, just why Esper is so favored in this matchup because there's that just difference of more interaction, more efficient interaction on Esper's side, like being able to play these bats as disruption, having like cut downs and go for the throats instead of get losts that leave behind 2 maps. And all just adds up to small advantages that like Esper is able to eke out here,
Mm-hmm.
like even in this very mirror match of a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm gonna assume on Sam on Chelsea's end steps, probably gonna play the Virtue of Loyalty and get another token, and then maybe play out the actual Virtue as an enchantment and start growing their board, or just electing to flash out their own Wandering Emperor.
Yeah, just maximizing tokens before you get the virtue down. If you draw a land, you can get 2 samurai from Wandering Emperor, get a knight from virtue, and then grow a board of 6 creatures. That's going to be pretty unbeatable.
If you're Sam here, do you channel Odawara and get rid of one of Chelsea's tokens, or do you play it as a land?
I think I just want the land. I think being able to get another 2/2 off this virtue is not dissimilar to getting rid of one of the tokens, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely think with the virtue, you're just not as afraid of the tokens.
Yeah, at this I completely agree with you. Sam's getting so wide now that it's not really Chelsea's not really threatening their board with a 5/5 and a 3/3.
I mean, at a certain point, kind of feels like Chelsea just has to start attacking with this anchorage, even just to like get map tokens.
Yeah, notably, you can attack there and still have the anchorage up on blocks because it will get untapped by the virtue. Though, of course, that could entice a double block and a trade, which unclear if that benefits you.
Yeah.
You know, Sam's going to try to grow that bat to where it's not going to be a trade. And seeing that go for the throat on top, I feel like Sam has to be a little bit relieved to know that that's there and can take out potentially the anchorage on um, his next turn.
Yeah. I mean, also just means that, you know, now he's got a 5/5 bat and he can make it a 6/6 with first strike.
Yeah, because that's nothing to scoff at. That's bigger than the bat god. This bat has ascended.
Yeah.
This
Do
is
you
how
think
bat gods are made.
with emperors and maps? Do you think Sam is at all, you know, prior to this activation, would have been worried about Chelsea playing another emperor? Because she did have the mana up.
I mean, to
Maybe,
some
but
extent, sure, but like with the go for the throat on top, I don't know how much that would matter here. Like, it would be able to stem the bleeding a bit, but I don't know if it would be enough to like truly swing the game.
True.
you just have to chump this 6/6.
Yeah, it's sad, but yeah, I think that's the move if you want to survive.
I don't see any other way out of this that doesn't chump the 6/6.
Mhm.
That's tough. That sucks.
Yeah.
And you still go to like 2?
Mhm.
Yep. Game is very much slipping away from Chelsea. These bats taking over the game, really.
I don't think there's any answers for Chelsea now. There's
You can activate Fairy Mastermind, get lost, which is why I think
Not
this No
even.
More Lies is really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, because that means there's not enough mana to even draw the card.
Yeah. So now it's just a attack with both bats just does it.
Mhm. And then we knew that Sam had to go for the third on the top. GG's to both of the players.
Yeah. GG's indeed. Congratulations, Sam, on making it to the top 8. I think we really saw there the incredible value that gets added by adding those black cards to the deck. I mean, obviously Chelsea was prepared for something way different than what Sam ended up bringing, but I mean, we can see why Esper has been a powerhouse in standard for years now. You know, like it has lived through many sets and many iterations.
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to think back to when Esper Midrange really, you know, came onto the forefront. How many
Before that,
seasons?
Esper Legends too.
Yeah.
But congratulations, Sam. We are so excited to have you in the top 8, and great job to Chelsea as well. It's always a feat to make it to the top 16. But that is it. Those are 4 of our top 8 players that we got to see tonight. Thank you so much to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring the VML. Thank you so much, Nile and Jason, for being here, for commentating. Thank you to our wonderful producer, Phoebe, and just thank you to our whole caster team. And mostly, thank you to the viewers for coming out and spending the evening with us. Niall, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to say about tonight?
I had a great time. I love watching these decks. I just love watching standard right now. It's so healthy. There's so many different viable decks. We got to see so many different matches and types of decks playing against each other. And I just think that's so cool and so much fun. And we're in the top 16 of a really, really tough tournament. So we're seeing a lot of really strong players and really cool decks. And I had a blast. It was an honor to get to cast it.
Yeah, some expert piloting as well. Jason,
Absolutely.
anything you'd like to say at the end of this?
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens next week as we go into the top 8 with all the players having to lock in a deck for the next 3 matches, not just one. A lot less metagaming going on there probably because you have to prepare for not just one opponent. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there, if the metagame narrows down or maybe shifts to something entirely different. And yeah, it's been an honor. I love coming on guesting. This has been great. Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
we've It's been a pleasure. You are an expert. You know your stuff, so it's great having two experts here to tell me what decisions I'm making that are bad. So thank you so much. Thank you, Wizards. Like I said, thank you to everybody for coming out. Phoebe, it's been a great time, and I can't wait for next week to see who is going to be the VML Season 11 champion. And everybody playing next week is also going to get an invite to the VML Champs happening after Season 13, and everybody in the top 16 as well as the top 8. We're gonna all get some fun cash prizes. Everybody likes money, so congratulations to everybody that made it this week. And we hope to see you next week for the end of season 11. I hope that you all have a wonderful night, and we'll catch you then.
Bye.